The day Minnesota made greased pigs illegal. Minnesota is a state that prides itself on lakes, polite neighbors, and an uncanny ability to endure winter temperatures that would make even the hardiest lumberjack question his life choices. It is also a state that once entertained a pastime so slippery, chaotic, and utterly absurd that it earned its own spot in the state legislature. This is the story of how Minnesota, in all its practical Midwestern wisdom, decided that chasing greased pigs for sport was no longer acceptable, and why that law, bizarre as it sounds, is very real and still exists today. To understand the law, you first have to understand the tradition. The greased pig contest is not, as some might imagine, a casual game with a few giggling children in a backyard. No, in its heyday, it was a spectacle of utter pandemonium. County fairs across the Midwest adopted this strange and slippery event with relish. A pig, usually young and exceedingly nimble, would be coated in a thick layer of lard or cooking oil. Spectators would gather around the pen, children and adults alike, some determined to catch the pig, others merely hoping to witness chaos unfold. And chaos always unfolded. The pig would zigzag with uncanny intelligence, slip through arms, dive under legs, and perform maneuvers that seemed designed specifically to humiliate any would-be captor. Minnesotans, however, had an appreciation for absurdity tempered with polite competition. They celebrated ingenuity and perseverance, even in the face of a swine coated in fat. The contests were full of sliding children, stumbling teenagers, and adults who probably should have known better. Laughter ricocheted across fairgrounds as the crowd cheered for heroic feats of balance, strategy, and occasionally pure dumb luck. Nobody could predict the outcome. The smallest child could somehow snatch the pig from the legs of a towering teenager. A confident adult might slip immediately and land in the mud with a spectacular display of humility. The pigs themselves, of course, remained unamused, their squeals echoing across the fairgrounds as they executed their acrobatic escapes with perfect porcine precision. For decades, the greased pig contest was a centerpiece of the Minnesota County Fair. It drew crowds, built community identity, and became the subject of local legend. Stories of certain pigs escaping the pen and running straight into the corn maze became family lore. Some contests were remembered less for who caught the pig and more for the unintentional hilarity of grown adults sliding headfirst into hay bales while trying to capture a pig that had already disappeared under a fence. Photographs from the 1950s and 60s show mud-streaked faces, triumphant children holding a pig overhead, and parents laughing so hard they could barely stand. These images, preserved in county archives and family albums, capture the innocent chaos of a pastime that seemed, at the time, perfectly natural. But as with all things that involve animals, unpredictability eventually attracted scrutiny. Farmers who understood pigs better than anyone began to voice concerns about the stress these contests caused. Veterinarians observed sprains, abrasions, and other injuries resulting from the frenzied attempts to capture the animals. Local officials noticed the liability concerns, particularly as crowds grew and more participants joined the spectacle without much thought for safety. The laughter and thrill remained, but it became increasingly clear that the event was not entirely harmless. Even a pig that seemed to survive the ordeal without injury was undoubtedly stressed, its frantic movements a clear sign that it did not consent to the entertainment being provided. By the late 20th century, broader cultural shifts had also begun to influence public perception. Across the United States, awareness of animal welfare had grown. Circuses faced criticism for the treatment of performing animals. Rodeos were pressured to implement stricter safety standards, and zoos began modernizing their enclosures. Within this context, a sport involving a pan-greased pig running for its life suddenly appeared outdated, even cruel. Communities that had long held on to the tradition began to quietly reconsider its place in their fairs. Some phased it out voluntarily, replacing it with obstacle courses or other family-friendly competitions. Others simply stopped promoting it as a highlight of the fair, letting the memory linger without actively continuing the practice. Despite these changes, the tradition clung stubbornly to the collective memory of Minnesota. Adults reminisced about their childhood triumphs and humiliations. Children were told tales of pigs that were so slippery they defied physics, and of contests so chaotic that entire families ended up entangled in mud. The humour of the event was undeniable, and even as awareness of animal welfare increased, it retained a place in the state's cultural imagination. People laughed at the absurdity of it all and recognized that in another time it had been considered acceptable fun. The tipping point came when legislators began examining state statutes and animal welfare regulations in earnest. Discussions were not fiery debates or public spectacles. Rather, they were calm, methodical meetings typical of Minnesota governance. Lawmakers, farmers, veterinarians, and concerned citizens all contributed perspectives. The central question was straightforward. Should the state continue to allow contests that clearly caused stress to animals, even if they were entertaining to humans? The answer, as it turns out, was no. Minnesota Statute Paragraph 343.36 was amended to make grease pig contests illegal. The wording was clear and unambiguous, reflecting a commitment to humane treatment while preserving the state's ability to manage fairs responsibly. There was no backlash, no sensational protest, and no dramatic media coverage. For Minnesotans, it was simply the next logical step, an old tradition being quietly retired in favour of safer, more ethical entertainment. The law did not erase the memories of those summers when pigs ran slippery and wild across fairgrounds. Instead, it preserved them as stories, anecdotes, and a form of cultural nostalgia. It was a recognition that while laughter and community are valuable, they should not come at the expense of the well-being of animals. The legacy of the law is more than a legal statement. It is a reflection of Minnesota's character. The state managed to balance humor, history, and humane treatment in a way that few other regions could. Generations of residents still share tales of past contests with pride, telling stories of miraculous pig captures, spectacular slips, and the unpredictable drama of a pig that simply refused to be caught. Yet, beneath the laughter is an understanding that those contests belonged to a different era, one in which oversight and ethical considerations were far less prominent. Even today, the law remains active. Greased pig contests are banned, a quiet reminder in the state statutes of a practice that once defined summer fairs. Fairs themselves have adapted, continuing to provide entertainment, community engagement, and memorable experiences without resorting to oil-slicked livestock. The pigs, now spared the stress of the chase, occupy a new place in Minnesota culture. Admired, celebrated, and entirely free from unnecessary peril. The story of Minnesota's greased pig ban is, at its heart, a story about balance. It is about honoring tradition while evolving ethically, about laughter while acknowledging responsibility, and about a state that could look back at its past with humor while moving forward with conscience. It is a story of a community learning, adapting, and ultimately doing what was right, sometimes in a quiet, unassuming way, which is, after all, very Minnesota. And so the law exists, the pigs remain unharmed, and Minnesotans continue to gather in summer fairs with the same joy and enthusiasm as before, just a little wiser and a little less slippery. The aftermath of the greased pig ban. Once Minnesota officially outlawed greased pig contests, the state did not erupt in outrage or confusion. There were no grand protests, no letters to the editor demanding the pigs be freed, and certainly no televised debates where experts argued over the ethics of lard-coated swine. Instead, Minnesotans did what they have always done when faced with change. They adapted. They adjusted with the quiet pragmatism of a people who can shovel a driveway in 20 below weather and still greet the neighbour with a smile. County fairs, which had been punctuated for decades by the squeals of terrified, slippery pigs and the mud-streaked faces of children and adults alike, began to evolve. The pens remained empty and conspicuous at first, as if the air itself remembered the chaos that once took place within. Fair organisers, understanding the need to fill the space, began experimenting with alternatives that could replicate the excitement without the ethical quandaries. They introduced obstacle courses that challenged participants to crawl, climb and leap with skill rather than desperation. They invented relay races where the aim was coordination instead of brute force, and they developed games that invited the community to laugh and cheer without anyone or any animal being put in harm's way. Parents who had grown up chasing pigs now guided their children through these new events with a mixture of nostalgia and gentle amusement. They told stories of their own encounters with the slick, wily creatures, embellishing the details for dramatic effect. The pig that escaped under a fence, the child who slipped into a mud puddle while attempting a heroic tackle, the adult who tripped spectacularly and somehow landed in a haystack while the pig made its triumphant escape. These tales, repeated year after year, became a form of oral history, a bridge between the old traditions and the new sensibilities. The humour was still present and the sense of community remained intact, but it was no longer necessary to coat an animal in grease to generate it. Even the pigs themselves, though blissfully unaware of their legal protection, benefited from this cultural shift. Animals that had once been chased, grabbed and sometimes injured in the name of entertainment now lived lives that were safer, calmer and remarkably less stressful. They became stars of educational exhibits, participants in competitions and beloved mascots for fairs across the state. Spectators could still enjoy watching pigs perform, but the emphasis shifted from humiliation to admiration, from chase to demonstration. Children learned about animal behavior and care. Farmers could showcase their livestock without fear of controversy, and the animals could simply exist without fear of being the centerpiece of a slippery spectacle. At the same time, the greased pig ban quietly gained notoriety outside of Minnesota. Tourists, curious readers, and eventually internet users stumbled upon the law and reacted with astonishment and laughter. "Minnesota has a law banning greased pig contests?" they asked. "Is this real?" And yes, it was real, perfectly documented in the state statutes. For outsiders, it seemed almost like folklore, a whimsical quirk of a Midwestern state. For locals, it was simply common sense, an example of Minnesota's characteristic blend of humour, practicality, and compassion. There was pride, but it was quiet and understated, expressed in knowing smiles rather than flamboyant declarations. The law also served as a subtle but enduring lesson in the evolution of cultural practices. Activities that once seemed innocent or entertaining can, over time, reveal unforeseen consequences. Communities are capable of recognizing those consequences and making changes that reflect ethical growth. Minnesota had managed to do this without scandal, without public outcry, and without sacrificing the joy and camaraderie that county fairs bring to small towns. It was a quiet victory for reason, a small but meaningful example of progress that preserved both tradition and compassion. Over time, the greased pig contests faded from memory, but the stories remained. Generations who had never touched lard or chased a pig for sport still learned about the events from parents and grandparents. They laughed at the chaos, marvelled at the ingenuity of both pig and human participants, and appreciated the lessons implicit in the change. This combination of humour, history and ethical reflection became part of Minnesota's identity, quietly reminding everyone that the state values both fun and responsibility. Even today, at modern fairs, the echoes of the past can be felt. The empty pens may no longer house slippery pigs, but the energy, laughter and excitement they once contained have found new outlets. Cornhole tournaments, obstacle courses and educational livestock demonstrations now fill the space. Families gather, communities celebrate, and everyone, pigs included, enjoys the fair in safety. The law remains in effect, a permanent reminder of the moment Minnesota decided that no amount of spectacle justified putting animals at risk. And while visitors may chuckle at the idea, the people of Minnesota know that it represents something far more important than humour: the ability to learn from the past and adapt traditions in a way that honours both community and conscience. In the end, the story of Minnesota's greased pig ban is not simply about pigs or grease. It is about people, about evolving communities, and about the way society can balance joy, tradition, and ethical responsibility. The law, odd as it may seem to outsiders, is a testament to Minnesota's approach to problem solving: thoughtful, humane, and quietly determined. And while the pigs no longer slip across the fairgrounds in pursuit of human amusement, they remain at the heart of the state's story, living reminders of a time when laughter came with a little mud, a little chaos, and a lot of ingenuity. Minnesota continues to hold fairs. It continues to bring families together. And it continues to tell stories of pigs who once outran children, adults, and history itself. The law that made all this possible still exists, quietly inscribed in the statutes, ensuring that the state can honour its past while protecting the welfare of its animals. It is a law as practical as it is whimsical, a law that reflects the very soul of Minnesota. Polite, responsible, imaginative, and never without a sense of humour. When Minnesota's grease pig law became legendary. Minnesota's grease pig law, while perfectly sensible to the locals, did not remain a quiet statute for long. As often happens with odd, specific and somewhat hilarious rules, it began to travel far beyond the borders of the state, slowly morphing from practical legislation into something approaching folklore. People outside the Midwest, unaware of the state's careful approach to ethics and community, read about it and reacted in equal parts disbelief and amusement. Social media, listicles, and late-night comedy shows all eagerly seized upon the story, declaring Minnesota the only state with the wisdom, foresight, and sense of humour to outlaw such a peculiar pastime. Within the state, reactions were far more understated. Minnesotans have long been experts in polite understatement, and this law was no exception. When someone mentioned the greased pig ban to an outsider, the response was usually a quiet chuckle and a calm explanation. "Yes, that's true," a Minnesotan might say, sipping their coffee in the corner of a fair hall. "We used to have them. We don't anymore. Better for everyone that way, don't you know?" The humour, such as it was, came from the recognition of absurdity tempered by practicality, not from mockery or exaggeration. The law itself, Minnesota Statute paragraph 34336, remains in effect today, a tangible artifact of the state's thoughtful approach to animal welfare. It is often cited in lists of strange or unusual laws, and yet it is neither outdated nor irrelevant. By preventing greased pig contests, the law ensured the continued ethical treatment of animals while preserving the integrity of county fairs and other public events. It is a rare case where a statute is simultaneously amusing to outsiders, deeply practical and historically significant, a trifecta that few laws manage to achieve. But while the statute became famous online, the real story lay in how the communities adapted. County fairs, once centered around pigs fleeing slick hands and mud-slicked children, found new ways to celebrate local culture. Obstacle courses became a staple, allowing participants to run, crawl and leap through fun challenges without risking injury to themselves or any animals. Sack races, pie-eating contests, and other traditional fair events gained renewed popularity, offering both spectacle and wholesome entertainment. Even educational programs featuring pigs and other farm animals flourished, turning the focus from chasing and slipping to observation, learning, and appreciation. Over time, the greased pig contest itself evolved from a literal event into a story that Minnesotans tell with fond nostalgia. Parents who once slid headfirst into mud while chasing a porcine fugitive now regale their children with tales that sound almost mythical. There is the pig that somehow escaped a full-grown adult by darting under a fence, the child who lunged heroically only to end up sprawled in hay, and the time a particularly clever pig eluded everyone for 15 minutes before disappearing into the crowd. Each story, retold with embellishment and laughter, preserves the memory of the tradition while highlighting the absurdity that eventually necessitated the law. The narrative of the greased pig ban also carries a subtle moral. It is a story of evolution and ethical awareness, a reminder that society can recognize the unintended consequences of tradition and act to correct them. The law did not emerge from outrage or sensationalism. It arose from careful observation, reasoned debate, and a commitment to balancing fun with responsibility. In this way, Minnesota offers an example of thoughtful governance, demonstrating that even small statutes can reflect the values of a community while addressing tangible ethical concerns. As outsiders discovered the law, they often imagined chaotic scenarios. A pig in a slick wrestling match, a sheriff intervening with a bucket of lard, or a child flying across the fairgrounds in pursuit of a squealing fugitive. These exaggerations, while entertaining, only underscore how remarkable it is that Minnesota passed such a law calmly, rationally, and without fanfare. The reality, of course, was far less dramatic, but infinitely more effective. The law stopped the greased pig contests, prevented animal stress, and allowed county fairs to thrive in a safer, more sustainable way. Even today, long after the last greasy contest, the impact of the law continues to be felt. Minnesota fairs remain vibrant hubs of community life, drawing families and neighbors together to celebrate summer, agriculture, and tradition. Pigs, meanwhile, are free from unnecessary stress, their lives enriched by educational and petting opportunities that allow fairgoers to interact without harm. The lessons of the past remain, tucked into stories and statutes, quietly informing how Minnesotans organize public events and treat their animals. The greased pig ban has also contributed to Minnesota's cultural identity, providing a story that locals can share with humor and pride. It is emblematic of the state's ability to approach life with practicality, ethical consideration, and a wink of whimsical humor. The law reminds Minnesotans that they can enjoy fun and community while evolving responsibly. And it entertains the wider world by illustrating a uniquely Midwestern approach to problem solving. Calm, logical, and just a little bit quirky. In this way, the story of Minnesota's greased pig law is far more than a tale of slippery swine. It is a reflection of how communities grow, how traditions can be reimagined, and how a state can protect its animals while keeping the laughter alive. The pigs may no longer slip across fairgrounds in frantic pursuit of freedom, but they remain central to the legend, immortalized in stories, photographs, and the law itself. That quiet statute, sitting in Minnesota's books, is a reminder that the past can be honored even as the future is reformed, and that even the most absurd tradition can evolve into a lesson in ethics, humor, and common sense. The story continues in memory, in practice, and in law. Minnesota's fairs flourish without greased pigs. Children still chase obstacles, families still gather, and laughter continues to echo across summer fields. The pigs have won, in a sense, achieving a freedom they were never asked to negotiate for, while the community continues to thrive. The law that made all of this possible stands unaltered, a quiet guardian ensuring that fun, tradition, and ethical responsibility can coexist in harmony, and that no pig ever has to face a pan of grease again. Minnesota's greased pig ban and its quiet legacy. Even decades after Minnesota passed its law banning greased pig contests, the story continues to ripple quietly through the state. The legislation, practical and unassuming, left behind a legacy that is equal parts humor, history, and ethical evolution. While outsiders often treat the ban as a peculiar curiosity, something to laugh about over social media or in listicles of strange state laws. For Minnesotans, it is a reflection of how a community can change without losing its character, how a state can preserve both tradition and conscience, and how a single law can shape cultural memory in ways that extend far beyond its original intent. The first summer after the ban was implemented, fair organisers faced a simple question. What replaces the greased pig contest? The answer was not difficult for Minnesota. Without needing drama or spectacle, the state pivoted toward other forms of wholesome entertainment that maintained the energy, excitement and laughter that county fairs demand. Obstacles courses sprang up, drawing children, teenagers and even adults into games that tested skill, balance and ingenuity rather than brute force or brute luck. Sack races, pie-eating contests and community games flourished, and the energy that once erupted over a pan-greased pig simply found new outlets. Families, meanwhile, adjusted seamlessly. Parents who had grown up chasing pigs now guided their children through these safer, cleaner competitions, often reminiscing about their own youthful exploits. Tales of pigs darting under fences, children sliding into mud, and adults tumbling with spectacular grace became cherished stories, told with laughter and a wink rather than longing for the past. The humour endured, the stories endured, and the lessons endured. Community can celebrate together, have fun, and create memories without placing animals in unnecessary danger. The pigs, of course, fared even better. Once the central figures in chaotic contests, they now thrived under more humane conditions. They became featured animals in educational programs, participants in 4-H competitions, and beloved mascots at county fairs. Children could still admire and interact with them, but in a way that emphasized care, respect, and curiosity rather than frantic pursuit. The animal welfare lessons implicit in the law became a subtle but enduring part of the cultural education at Minnesota fairs. The pigs themselves, though silent and oblivious to legal statutes, enjoyed the freedom to exist without stress, which is a reward in itself. Meanwhile, the law itself began to gain attention beyond Minnesota's borders. Travelers, journalists, and online audiences were intrigued, amused, and sometimes baffled by the idea that a state had formally prohibited the greasing of pigs. Headlines described it as absurd, quirky, or even legendary, framing Minnesota as a state where logic, ethics, and humor intersect in unexpected ways. For locals, however, the law was simply reasonable. A practical decision quietly implemented and silently observed in perfect accordance with Minnesota's understated approach to governance. It was not meant to amuse outsiders, but its notoriety grew anyway, a testament to the state's ability to solve problems calmly and effectively. As the law became part of Minnesota's broader cultural narrative, it helped shape how residents viewed the balance between tradition and progress. The Grease Pig contest, once a source of entertainment and community identity, had been retired in favour of safer, more ethical activities. But the laughter, camaraderie and collective joy that had defined those events were not lost. They migrated seamlessly into new games, new competitions and new traditions. The story of the pigs and the slippery summers remained part of the state's folklore, preserved in anecdotes, photographs and memories shared from generation to generation. The greased pig ban also subtly reinforced Minnesota's reputation as a state that values both humour and responsibility. It demonstrated that practical ethics need not come at the expense of joy or communal spirit. A law could be both serious and whimsical, protective and memorable, creating a legacy that is as much about character as about the literal prohibition of greased pigs. Minnesotans could laugh at the absurdity of the past while recognizing the wisdom of their actions, a balance few states manage to achieve with such grace. Even today, decades after the law's passage, county fairs across Minnesota continue to thrive. Children run, families gather, and the air is filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the occasional cheer for a well-executed obstacle course. Pigs are present in safe and educational ways, allowing attendees to engage with livestock without the chaos or stress of bygone summers. The law remains in effect, quietly sitting in the state statutes as a reminder of what has changed, what has been learned, and what Minnesotans value. It protects the pigs, preserves the integrity of the fairs, and maintains a sense of continuity between past and present. The story of the greased pig law, therefore, is more than a tale of animals and entertainment. It is a story about culture, ethics, and adaptation. It is about a state that respects both history and responsibility, that understands that fun need not come at a cost, and that can evolve traditions in ways that reflect conscience without losing spirit. Minnesota's approach to this law exemplifies the ability to honour memory, to laugh at the past, and to continue building community in thoughtful, sustainable ways. Ultimately, the greased pig ban serves as a quiet monument to Minnesota's character. It is a law that blends practicality, humour and humanity. A law that demonstrates foresight without ceremony, and a law that continues to protect the well-being of animals while allowing communities to thrive. Pigs are no longer running frantic oil-coated laps across fairgrounds, but the joy of summers past lives on in new activities, new traditions, and the enduring cultural memory of a state that did the right thing in a perfectly Minnesotan way. The ban, the pigs and the laughter all remain intertwined, a reminder that even the strangest laws have stories, lessons and legacies worth remembering. Minnesota proved that one could retire a tradition with care and creativity, preserving the spirit while safeguarding the participants, both human and porcine. And decades later, the law still stands, quietly ensuring that fairgrounds remain safe, events remain fun, and no pig ever has to endure the chaos of a greased contest again. Minnesota's greased pig law today. Decades have passed since Minnesota quietly decided that no pig should ever again be chased across a slick, oil-covered pen. Time, as it tends to do, has softened memories of frantic squeals, sliding children, and adults performing unintentional slapstick across muddy fairgrounds. Yet the law, tucked firmly into Minnesota Statute paragraph 343.36, remains in effect. It is a silent but steadfast guardian, ensuring that the chaos of yesteryear does not repeat itself, while also standing as a unique testament to the state's blend of practicality, conscience, and humor. Modern county fairs in Minnesota are vibrant affairs, full of music, laughter, and the smells of funnel cakes, popcorn, and roasting corn. Children dash through obstacle courses designed to test agility and coordination rather than brute persistence, while adults cheer from the sidelines, perhaps recalling stories from their own childhoods when catching a slippery pig was considered the height of summer sport. The energy is the same. The joy remains, but the pigs are no longer subjected to stress, wrestling, or a coating of grease. They roam in pens with hay, nibble apples, and sometimes star in 4-H demonstrations, educating young people about care, responsibility, and the temperament of animals. The legacy of the greased pig law goes beyond animal welfare. It is now a story Minnesotans share with a wink and a smile. Tourists and newcomers hear the tale and are initially incredulous. Yes, a law against greased pig contests actually exists, and yes, it was passed decades ago. Locals respond with characteristic understatement. They tell the story calmly, weaving together history, humour, and a quiet pride in having solved a problem with reason rather than spectacle. The legend of the law, much like the old contests themselves, has a way of slipping into conversations, becoming a gentle reminder that Minnesota has always been practical, ethical, and willing to find humour in the absurd. Educational programs now feature pigs not as objects of chaotic entertainment, but as ambassadors of learning. Children learn about their habits, care, and intelligence, and families can observe these animals without the adrenaline-charged panic of chasing them. It is a far gentler interaction than the greased pig contests of the past, and it reflects the evolution of community standards over time. The story of the pigs, the contests, and the law is passed down with a combination of nostalgia and approval, reminding everyone that sometimes what seems like a whimsical decision is actually a forward-thinking one. Even online, the story of Minnesota's greased pig law has taken on a life of its own. Lists of strange state laws feature it prominently, often accompanied by laughter, disbelief, and a few exaggerated tales of children flying through the mud. While this attention is entertaining, It also serves as a subtle acknowledgement of the state's values. The ability to govern with reason, to balance tradition with ethics, and to implement a law that is as sensible as it is whimsical. The law's notoriety does not diminish its practical effect. It only highlights how memorable a thoughtful, unusual statute can be. In many ways, the law has become part of Minnesota's cultural identity. It represents the state's willingness to adapt, to evolve past traditions that may no longer be appropriate, and to do so in a way that preserves the community spirit. The greased pig contests are gone, but the laughter, the stories, and the summer joy remain. Parents tell their children about the days when pigs were cunning, children were determined, and mud was everywhere. They laugh at the absurdity, remembering how a simple animal became the star of a community spectacle, and they emphasize the lesson: joy need not come at the expense of responsibility. Even state lawmakers, when asked, often respond with pride and a touch of amusement. The law has endured precisely because it works. It protects animals, preserves community standards, and allows fairgrounds to flourish without the chaos of slippery, squealing pigs. No citizen needs to wonder about the well-being of these animals during the summer fairs. It has been guaranteed for decades, and the statute remains enforceable today. In this way, Minnesota has quietly created a legacy that is ethical, effective, and undeniably memorable. Ultimately, the story of Minnesota's greased pig law is a story about foresight, humour, and evolving traditions. It is about a state that once hosted slippery, chaotic contests for entertainment, and that later recognized that times had changed. It is about community, laughter, and responsibility coming together in a way that leaves everyone, humans and pigs alike, better off. The law, still active in the code, is a testament to that balance. It reminds Minnesotans and visitors alike that even the most bizarre traditions can be re-evaluated, that culture can evolve without losing its spirit, and that legislation can be both practical and whimsical. Minnesota continues to hold its fairs. Children run through obstacle courses, families enjoy music and food, and pigs quietly live their lives in comfort and safety. The law that once banned greasing them remains firmly in place, unchallenged and uncontroversial, a silent but enduring protector of both animal welfare and community spirit. It is a story that travels well, a law that makes people smile, and a tradition that, though retired, continues to teach lessons about ethics, humour, and the simple wisdom of doing the right thing. The pigs, free from grease, have won. The community has thrived. And the law, still in effect today, ensures that Minnesota's summers are full of laughter and memories, not chaos or unnecessary harm. The story is complete, yet its lessons continue, quietly guiding the state with every fair, every obstacle course, and every smile in the sunshine.